My Sinister Hand. I've been editing for about 20 years now, and I'd like to think that I've gained a little bit of wisdom about the craft. So I figured it's time I put together some videos that gathered up all the tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way. And I think the best way to start off this video series is with my top 10 organizational tips for Premiere Pro. Let's dive in. All right, the first tip is to keep your footage organized from the get-go. This happens before we even jump into Premiere. There's a little bit of housekeeping to be done. I like to keep everything in a folder structure like this. I have one overarching folder called Working Projects. That's for all my current projects that I'm editing or have recently edited and may need to go back to do revisions. Inside that, I usually break it up by clients or projects. I have my own My Sinister Hand stuff here with all the various projects. And then, of course, the baking show of my girlfriend, Bakes by Dawn. And here we have all her projects, banana bundt cake, fig cookies, pumpkin donuts. To give you an example, each of these are individual projects. And then inside those, you will actually see that I have the Premiere project files are there, and also I have different folders for all the footage, the GoPro footage, the main camera, stuff we shot on the phone, and then any pickups we've done, and then also thumbnails that I designed for the YouTube video itself. This is all in one folder. That way I know once I go to archive this, everything if I ever needed to redo the fig cookies video again, it's all here in one place, and once it's archived, it's still all in one folder. It just makes things easier down the road for like relinking footage. It's just a very organized way of knowing that nothing's going to be missing. All that to say, there is one folder that I keep called Film Toolbox, and this is actually where I have like all my sound effects, YouTube music, any animations like a subscribe animation that I created, things that are going to be used across many projects and going to be shared. I have them all in this Film Toolbox, and this lives permanently on my hard drive because I'm always accessing it, year after year for various projects. So any graphics or sound effects or fonts or anything like that can be found here. So if I was ever relinking a project, I know this is where I go for that. But all the footage and all project specific things are going to be in the project folder. So because also these will be archived and taken off the main hard drive. So if I had put a sound effect in one of these folders here and then went to archive and archived it, later on I might want to use that sound effect for a different project, and I couldn't find it because it's been removed. So keep all that stuff in like what I call a film toolbox. I think that's a great tip. All the stuff that you're going to access through the years. So that's the first tip, is just to make sure you have your own. It doesn't have to be the way I do it, but your own way of organizing footage and assets, so that you know where they're at if you ever have to relink a project or rebuild a project. It's just going to make your life a lot easier. So let's open up Premiere for tip number 2. I'm using 2024. Let's talk about templates. So when I first build a new project, let's go to New Project. Under Project Template, you will notice I have a couple different things. Bakes by Dawn, I have a broadcast template, I have chip projects number 2. Various templates that I've set up that help me build a project much quicker from the ground up. So let's go ahead and start with we'll call this example, and we will just put it in. We'll put it in the Figs project. So if I go to Bakes by Dawn and click that, I'll show you what's going to happen here. Let's create. Now in this template, you'll notice I've got some folders in my project bin. I've got sequences, footage, audio, graphics, music, photos, and sound effects. Now these are folders that I created and saved this as a template. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But in the sequence, I've got like a pre-made sequence that's 23:9, 4 mono discrete channels, HD. And you'll notice I have an old bin. I'll come back to that old bin in a little bit. And then under footage, there's nothing there yet, but that's where I will import my footage. Same with audio, if I import any audio files. My graphics, and you'll notice I actually have some things in graphics already. I have a 16:9 4:5 mat that I created. Sometimes I need for various clients. I have a lower third that I created for Bakes by Dawn. I have a sidebar for like recipe stuff. I have an end card, and I have her logo animation. So these are things that I use in every Bakes by Dawn video. So I don't have to just import all these random things every time I start a new video. So I have them built into the template. So when I click that Bakes by Dawn template, it sucks in all these things that I use all the time. A subscribe animation, that's there already. Saves me a lot of time. And you probably noticed this color wheel. This is something I just grabbed off the internet, just your basic colors. This comes in handy a lot, especially if you're doing graphics or text on screen and you need just like a quick green or a red. You can eyedropper this. So it's just nice to have this in your graphics folder and bring it into your source window anytime just to speed up, text and graphics. So that's a great tip. Just steal a color wheel off the internet and like in a JPEG or a PNG and put it in your graphics folder. Nothing under folders yet. Sound effects, you'll notice I have a whoosh. I use a whoosh a lot for my transitions. So I just have that kind of automatically imported as well. Now, if you want to do this, if you want to work with templates, which I suggest you do, like especially if you have multiple clients that need different things, I would build a template for each client. And the way you do that is essentially open up a brand new project, create your folders, name them how you want. This is just the one that I came up with, and I numbered them so that sequence folder is always at the top. Footage is next and all that. And then import any of your assets that you want in every project. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go to File, Save as Template. And then you just give the template a name. We'll name it Example. And you'll notice, let me go ahead and close this down. Let's close Project. If I go to New Project and I go to my project template, you will now see Example is here. And if we open that up, it has all our graphics and stuff already imported. So using templates, especially if you have multiple clients or multiple different projects you're working on, using templates like this just helps get you up and running and get you editing a lot faster. All right, so for tip 3, we're going to talk about designated tracks. I'm going to bring up a Bakes by Dawn video here, the fig breakfast cookies. There's a couple things you'll notice here. You'll probably notice a lot of different colors going on, which will be talked about in a minute. That's tip number 4, actually. But this one is talking about track designation. And what I mean by that is I tend to always put my cameras on 1, 2, and 3, video tracks 1, 2, and 3. Usually I have 3 camera angles, for instance, but this project I have 2. So track 1 is my GoPro, track 2 is my main camera, and I actually don't have a third angle for this particular video. So track 3 is actually used for some B-roll shots, some cutaways, and you can actually see those here. These yellow clips are the B-roll, the close-up shots. And then you'll notice that 5, 6, and 7, video 5, 6, and 7, I usually designate to graphics. So you will notice that I have the logo for Bakes by Dawn here on track 5, and then up here on track 7 is actually a transition. So those are usually the tracks I designate for graphics. And what that allows me to do is, for instance, from a bird's eye view, I can easily see, okay, I've got 2 camera tracks, a third like B-roll track, and then like 3 tracks of graphics. It allows me to quickly, especially when I'm near the end of a project, quickly identify elements of my edit. And for instance, if I needed to change all of my GoPro shots. Say I needed to lighten them up. Say I go here, let me open up the color panel. Say I just needed to brighten them all up. Now that's way blown out, so we don't actually want to do that. But for instance, I would do that, and then I would Apple C to copy the clip, and then I would actually highlight all those clips, and I would do a paste attributes and paste the color to all those clips. And granted, I don't want to do that, so I'm actually going to Apple Z or Command Z, undo. But what you can see what that does for me, like if I need to select all my GoPro shots, that's all I got to do. Like from a bird's eye view, I can see it's all on, I know GoPro is only on that track, nothing else. So I don't need to worry about screwing up the color on one of my other shots or my other cameras. I can just quickly and easily select that. And also the color helps, which will be the next tip I talk about. This tip about the designated tracks and the label colors kind of go hand in hand. Also down here, you will see that the audio track is track 1. The main track, which is her mic.
Applesauce, and it's in oats.
Her lav. And then tracks 2 and 3 are designated to sound effects, usually like my whooshes for my transitions. And any other little pop-ins or whatever. Little, let's see, what's this here? This sound effect. Yeah, it's a little mouse click for the subscribe button. All right. So I can quickly and easily say, okay, I know all these 2 tracks just have my sound effects. And then tracks 4 and 5 usually are designated for music. This particular project's a little light on the music, but I definitely have some projects I have to do for clients where it's wall-to-wall music. So usually I have 2 or 3 different tracks laid out so where I can kind of checkerboard the music tracks and overlap them. But you'll see I've got them on track 4. So I know these are all my music tracks, right? Again, it just having them designated and not having like, oh, some music's on this track, some music's up here with the dialogue. It just makes things a lot more organized and easy, especially if you wanted to do, say, let's pull up the audio track mixer. Say like her dialogue is too loud, right? We're like,
so the oats need
her dialogue's like 6 decibels too loud. Since all her dialogue is on track 1, I can use the track mixer and just bring the whole track down, and that's going to bring all her dialogue down by, let's do -6.
Be softened so that everything can stick together.
We've easily brought her dialogue down and not messed with music levels or sound effect levels because we know they're not on track 1. So that's a big thing, I think, is having designated tracks for different elements. Dialogue's all on one track, or maybe 2 different tracks if you got 2 people talking, so you can isolate person 1, you can jack them up via the track mixer, and then person 2, you can bring them down. So I highly recommend dividing your assets up like that. It just makes life a lot easier, especially in the later stages, the fine tuning stages, when you're tweaking audio just to get those little fine adjustments, when you're tweaking color. It just goes a long way to have them split up on the tracks. And then tip number 4, which is about the color labels, kind of goes hand in hand because, again, it does the same thing. It allows me to have a bird's eye view and see what's going on. I've got my GoPro, I've got my main camera, I've got some B-roll in the yellow there. So yeah, I mark all my cutaway shots. My B-roll shots are yellow. They're always marked yellow. And my cameras are different shades of blue. So if I had a third camera here, I'd probably have it labeled. Let's see, what are the other colors we have available to us in the labels? I would probably do, let's see, I think iris is what it already is. Maybe a cerulean, and then we've got the dark blue for the GoPro. So yeah, like shades of blue for the cameras, for your main camera angles, and then shades of like purple and pink and stuff for graphics. So you can see that like my lower thirds are this pink color here,
when you
right?
Get it dried
so I know any of these pink, I don't even have to click on this here, and I know that's a lower third. Say it's a lower third because of the color. And then I know this is not a lower third. This is actually more of an animated graphic because it's more of a purple. And that's more of my subscribe animation, right?
And
So again, you can see where my lower thirds are and where my text is. So again, the color and the designation of tracks just allows me from a bird's eye view to see what's going on without having to dive in and scroll through and figure out stuff. It's just a kind of a shorthand to identify what's going on in your project. All right, tip number 5 is about utilizing workspaces. Let's jump back into Premiere here. I've pulled up a different project. So if you don't know what workspaces are, it's essentially presets of your layout of your screen, of your panels here, like your source window, your program window, your timeline window, your project window, color correction panel, all that stuff. So if you go to Window, the first option here is Workspaces, and it gives you a drop-down menu and a whole bunch of presets that Premiere comes with. You'll notice that I've got some that I've created myself, these ones in all caps. And what I would suggest doing is in your different stages of edits, whether it's an assembly or if it's logging or if it's multicam editing or if it's color correction, I would find out which windows you absolutely need open and have those set up and then save a workspace. So I'll show you, for instance, I've got assembly. This is my assembly setup here where it's got source, program, timeline, and my project window. Those are the only things I ever need when I'm doing an assembly cut. When I'm starting to just slap stuff together, I'm going through footage and doing my in and outs and plopping them on the timeline. I don't need any color panels open, any scopes, color scopes open, any track mixer, anything like that. So I just get everything out of the way and only have what I necessarily need to do the job at the time, and then I save it as a workspace. So, for instance, you can see here now I've got a multicam clip here. I've got like 3 cameras set up in a multicam nested sequence, right? And if I click my multicam button, turn that on there. Okay, but if you'll notice, it's kind of small because my source window is taking up a lot of stuff, a lot of space. And I just don't have the real estate I want to really be able to see my angles. So instead of like then resizing it after I've done my assembly and like trying to figure out, oh, let's do this and that, I actually have a workspace saved for multicam. So if I click on multicam here, it automatically gets rid of the source window for me. And I have a lot more real estate to see my 3 cameras. And as I'm going through, I can, press 1, 2, and 3 and do all my camera switching.
In there, so
which I've actually already done. You can see all the cuts here. I've already done my camera switching on this particular sequence. But again, having those workspaces just quickly rearranges your windows for whatever you're doing at the time. And then if I wanted to do, for instance, do color, if I was ready to move on to the color correcting stage, I could press color and it would actually bring up my scopes. I've saved it so that it has the scope window and my Lumetri color panel all ready to go. So I can quickly switch back and forth depending on what job I'm trying to get done at the time. And you can even go to, let's go to audio. And you'll see that they actually have the clip mixer and the track mixer brought up for you. So you can actually do audio mixing. And so, yeah, so Workspaces, super helpful as a kind of like presets for your different layouts. So I highly recommend using these and creating your own, actually. I definitely recommend creating your own once you kind of figure out what you need and what you don't, because everybody's different. So the pre-made workspaces I've always find are a little, I feel like there's always a little too much there, actually, for what I need. All right, tip number 6 is keyboard shortcuts. I know this is kind of a no-brainer. Keyboard shortcuts are definitely going to speed up your workflow. And all I can say is, go online, find, you can probably find it on Adobe, find their list of keyboard shortcuts and just print it out and have it on the desk next to you while you're learning. And you'll find out which keyboard shortcuts you use the most. But just a quick example of some of the ones I use all the time is Shift 5, which brings up the effects control tab, And because, I mean, honestly, I'm resizing, scaling up shots all the time to reframe them, moving them around. So I use the effects control panel all the time. And if I always had to, say I'm working in the project bin here, and then I'm over here and I'm trying to click on this, then I've got to go up here and sort for the tab and find the tab. Sometimes it's not even open, right? Like it's not even there. So you have to go to window, effects control. I mean, it's time consuming. But if you know Shift 5, it's always going to pop to that tab for you. And it's just super helpful. Another one, effects. Like if you're always throwing effects on there and you always need to pull effects out of the effects tab, Shift 7 brings up the effects tab. So again, I'm not going to go through all the keyboard shortcuts here, but definitely print it out, have it on the desk as you're learning them. And you'll notice there's certain ones you just always use, and eventually they'll just be second nature. All right, so tip number 7 is about transition presets. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's jump back in here to the Fig Cookie video, Bakes by Dawn. And you will notice I have got an adjustment layer here, and that's actually a flash transition.
All right, so let's
see that flash transition. So that's something I created. That's not one of the stock transitions that's included in Premiere. And there's another one. That's a little snapshot transition. I'll show you. Let's go ahead and delete that. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. These are ones that I created back in the day, like quite a while ago, because I wanted a simple flash transition, and Premiere doesn't have it. So I took an adjustment layer. I took some effects. What I did is I took a levels effect and a fast blur, and I keyframed them to create this blurry, blown out transition, a flash transition. But the thing is, I don't want to be doing that every time I need a flash transition. I don't want to have to like drag and drop from the effects panel into my effects control panel and then keyframe the levels up and down, like to keyframe the white levels and the black levels, and then keyframe the blurriness. You don't want to do that every time for a transition. So luckily you don't have to. What you can do is you can create these presets. So if you go into your effects panel, you'll see a folder with a little plus symbol, a little star symbol, I guess it actually is. It's called presets. If you go to the drop down, you will see these presets that I've created: chip flash 1, chip flash 2, chip flash 3, echo, wipe, snapshot, blur, dissolve. These are all ones I've created by hand on an adjustment layer. But then I saved them, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to go to effects controls. Since the flash transition was constructed of a levels effect and a fast blur effect, I want to just make sure both of those are highlighted, right click, save preset, and we'll go flash demo. I'll just name it flash demo. You want to choose scale here, and what that will allow you to do is no matter how long a adjustment layer you plop this onto, it's going to adjust its keyframes accordingly. It'll like scale them out or scale them down depending on the size of the length of your adjustment layer. So we'll choose scale here. There's probably other instances when you're doing transitions where you'll need to anchor to an in point or out point depending on the type of transition you're doing, but for the most part, scale would be the one you want to choose. So say OK. If you go back to effects, you'll now see flash demo. So let's show you. I'll show you how that worked. I'm going to throw a brand new adjustment layer over here. Oops. Undo that. Slap it down here. I'm going to make it 6 frames long. I'm going to nudge it over 3 times so it's centered. So it's an empty adjustment layer at the moment. There's no transition there. But what I'm going to do is I'll go to my effects panel, go to flash demo, the preset we just created. I'm going to drag and drop it onto that adjustment, and you'll see it did that flash transition for us. So it just saves you a lot of time and work, so you don't have to create flash transitions, or transitions, I should say, from scratch every time. Anytime you create a good one, just save it as a preset. All right, tip number 8 is a quick one. It's about the buttons and the button editor. When you first open Premiere, you will only see a few of these. You'll probably see your play, your transport, your go to in and outs, stuff like that. and maybe marker. You'll notice there's some here that you probably don't see, like the safe margins, loop playback, multicam toggle, proxy toggle. Definitely dig into this button editor. There are useful things here that you might end up using a lot, like me. For instance, I use safe margins a lot to make sure my text is in the proper alignment. If being seen on a TV for broadcast, you got to make sure you're within your title safes and your action safes. So I use safe lines a lot. So it's just nice to have that button right here to toggle those on and off. And sometimes with audio editing, if I'm trying to do some EQing, like I might actually want to loop one clip. Actually, that was not her talking, so let's try.
Be too full, just.
So I might actually want to loop something, right? If I in and out here. Normally, it
doesn't have to be too full, just cover it.
It's not going to loop that playback, but if I was EQing this particular section, I'd probably want it playing over and over and over while I'm, changing the EQ to get it dialed in. You can actually loop playback with this button.
Doesn't have to be too full, just cover it. Doesn't have to be too full.
Which is very useful in audio editing. And so that's something I do a lot in the fine cut stages for audio editing. So having this toggle loop playback button available to me is great. Same thing with multicam. I do a lot of multicam editing, so to be able to toggle that on and off. And if you ever work with proxies, toggling on the proxies. And then also this button here, the export frame. It's kind of I call it the screen grab. Like if I needed to grab something like this for, say, a thumbnail, to create a thumbnail for YouTube, just hit the export button, name it, decide if you want a JPEG or a TIFF or a PNG, and tell it where you want it to go. You can browse to different folders. So just being able to do a quick screen grab with this button here, I love. Just kind of speeds up my process instead of having to go up here and find out wherever it is in the file menu. It's just a quick button that I've got always available to me. So I highly recommend diving into the button editor, picking and choosing some things that maybe you use a lot and drag them down to your program monitor or your source monitor. You can have those buttons available over here too. And just create your own custom little work toolbar here. It's just going to speed up things a lot for you, so you don't have to go digging through the menus. All right, organizational tip number 9, the old bin. You probably saw this mentioned when I was doing tip number 2 about project templates, but in my sequence bin, you will see my current sequence that I'm working on, or the latest sequence that was worked on. And then you will see a folder called old, or a bin called old. This contains all the previous cuts. And what happens is when I'm working on a cut, before I do any major change, or after a first rough cut is delivered and I've gotten some notes, I save that sequence, I duplicate it. I rename the duplicate like rough cut number 2, and then I start working on notes that I've gotten from the producer or whatever. And then send off rough cut 2. And if I get notes for that, then I will duplicate the sequence again, put it in the old folder, and then, call it fine cut. And then I start working on the fine cut sequence. So essentially what it is I'm putting duplicates into this old folder at different stages of the cut's life, so to speak. And what this allows me to do is, if at any stage I'm like, oh my God, we've really screwed this cut up, like if we rearrange something or did some overhaul or some major treatment to it that me and the producers are like, oh, this is crap, we got to go back. I don't have to try to reconstruct and rearrange and figure out where we were, a week ago. I can just go to my old bin and step back in time. It's essentially like a little time machine. I can step back to rough cut 2, or I can step back to rough cut 1. And you can see these are all at different levels of working. There's no graphics on this one, right? Like I can just cut and not worry about screwing things up because I know I can always step back incrementally in time. So I highly suggest creating your own old bin in your sequences, and just every once in a while save it, sequence, duplicate it, rename it, and then stash it away in the old bin. It's going to save you a lot of headaches down the road, especially if you're working with producers and getting a lot of notes, and especially if you're working with producers who decide, not all producers give great notes. Let's just face it, right? So sometimes you gotta backpedal, and this is just going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches if you have an old bin. Okay, tip number 10. It's all about archiving. You've finished your project and you want to free up some working hard drive space. Granted, when you started this, your footage or your client's footage should already have been backed up on a hard drive and a second hard drive for redundancy. So all your raw footage should already be stowed away and for safekeeping. But you also want to archive your project because who knows, about a year from now, the client may hit you up and be like, we want to revisit this video. We want to update some stuff. And you don't want to rebuild this thing from scratch. You want to have a head start. And the best way to do this is through this thing called Project Manager. So it's under File. It's the bottom one, Project Manager. If you click on Project Manager, you will see this dialog box and you can select your sequences. Usually I select all of these just for safekeeping because who knows if I ever need to dig into some of these sequences. But you could just use your latest sequence, the one that was delivered to the client. What you can do is click that sequence and you're going to select Collect Files and Copy to New Location. I usually click Exclude Unused Clips. Now what this is going to do is when it archives this project, it's going to ignore all the footage that you did not use in your cut. And I think this is safe to do because, again, the footage is backed up somewhere else. It's already safe. So if you ever need to go back to a clip that you never used, it's there. But this is going to make the archive project a lot smaller because it's just going to get rid of any clips you didn't use. I'm actually going to unclick Include Preview Files because that's just space that you don't need as well, because you can always rebuild the preview files. If you rebuild this project a year from now or whatever, you can always re-render. And then you want to navigate it to, I have a folder called Archive Projects. This is where all my archive projects go, and then I move them off to an external hard drive and a backup external hard drive for redundancy. And then that frees up my working drive. So select your sequence, collect files and copy to new location, exclude unused clips, and just press OK. It's going to analyze the project, copy media, and it is going to save it to that folder. So let me switch over to Finder here, and I will show you what it does. Let's go to my Finder. Okay, Finder, and we're going to navigate to Working Projects, Archive Projects, and you'll notice now in Archive Projects, it has a folder called Copied _ Fig Cookies Example. So that's a copied project, and it has the clips I used in my sequence. It's got my graphics. It's got the Premiere project file. It's got media cache. It's got sound effects. It's got everything you need, essentially. Anything you used in whatever sequence you selected and told it, it's going to copy everything. So essentially, you could send this folder to another editor that has Premiere, and they could open this up, and they could start working on your project if you needed to hand a project off or something. So this Project Manager option is just helps so much when you're done with a project and you're trying to clean up hard drive space, because that's a hot commodity, especially when you're an editor and you're dealing with 4K footage. I mean, your hard drive space is going to get eaten up quick. So you definitely need to be archiving your projects and moving them on to an external, over to a shelf for safekeeping, so you can keep taking new jobs and new projects on. So definitely look into the Project Manager. So there you have it, my top 10 organizational tips for Premiere Pro. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. And if you got any tips of your own, drop them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because I'm going to have more videos like this coming very soon. And if you need any B-roll for your current project, check out my Pond 5 page. The link will be in the description. Thanks for watching.